Morning. Hi, I'm Karen Kelly, Director of the Exhibits and Education at the Children's Museum of Atlanta. I want to welcome you all to the Children's Museum of Atlanta's Town Square. It's a virtual series designed for families, educators, and our community to learn about and discuss the important issues and challenges we are all facing. Children's museums around the country serve as town squares for families with young children, and CMA serves that role in our community. We're a gathering place where everyone is invited to explore, engage, and learn in the way that children learn best, through play. Over the past months, we've really heard a lot from families and educators who are seeking meaningful conversations, information, resources, and ideas to help them navigate this very challenging time. We have been so fortunate to engage our best and brightest in these conversations that will hopefully enlighten, educate, and in some cases dispel some myths. This month, our focus is on parenting through a pandemic and how to make the most out of virtual learning. Last week, we heard from Dr. Caitlin Dooley, the Superintendent for Educational Learning at the State Department of Education. If you missed Dr. Dooley's episode or want to go back and listen to some of our other sessions, they have all been recorded and are available through our blog on our website, childrensmuseumatlanta.org, or through our YouTube channel. I want to thank you again for joining us. And I also want to welcome Dr. Meghan Welch. I'm very excited to have her today. Dr. Welch is a program specialist at the State Department of Education. She is working on the L4GA project and has since 2018. And L4GA stands for Literacy for Learning, Living, and Leading. And she'll tell you a little bit more about that project. In addition to that, Meghan has served on our advisory committee for exhibits and education for years at the Children's Museum. And she has 4 young children, one of whom just walked in and asked her for duct tape before we started this conversation. Meghan, thank you so much for joining us. And I would love to hear from you why you thought it was so important to participate in this conversation.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks so much for having me. It's a great way to connect with the learners in our state. These conversations are so important, especially when we're all going through difficult times. And one of the things in particular that I like to remember is that, museums and children's museums are informal learning spaces. And those are so important right now. We're all kind of in informal learning spaces all the time because we're not in school buildings. So I think it's so important to stay kind of abreast of what's going on in those spaces, connect with those learners, connect with the teachers that use those spaces, connect with the parents. So thank you so much for having me. I do work with the Literacy for Learning, Living, and Leading grant at the state. We have about 80 districts that we are currently funding, and it's a good way, the grant in particular is a good way to describe how our Curriculum and Instruction Division and our State Department of Education kind of works with districts in general. In the grant, the districts can come up with their own projects that we fund. There are some stipulations that they have to do in order to be a part of the grant, but in general, it's really whatever works best to make literacy gains in their communities. And they are, we support them in doing that. So we can't really, at the state level, mandate a whole lot of things that happen in local districts. That is a local control state. So we support as much as we can. So just to, let the audience know that we don't really get right into the nitty gritty of what districts and classrooms and teachers can do in their own schools.
So starting the new academic year, though, the State Department of Education had certain recommendations for elementary kids, for example, that they were hoping school systems could follow. Can you mention a couple of those?
Sure. We have instruction time guidelines, like having, if you are virtual, having about an hour and a half instruction daily. And that kind of lines up with our literacy grant as well. In our project, we are supposed to have 90 minutes of literacy instruction per day. And that might happen face-to-face. Some districts are face-to-face. And then virtually, it might happen, broken up throughout the day. So it's really how it works best for them. And if they're in a hybrid model, it might be a combination of videos, or it might be a combination of asynchronous and synchronous instruction, which is at the live instruction.
Mhm.
Sorry if I get into education jargon, I don't mean to, and ask for any kind of clarification. We're looking at the chat, so if I say something, how educators love acronyms,
Right.
um, I'll be happy to clarify. But yeah, we do offer some guidelines and support, and but we can't go in and say that this is what you absolutely have to do across the state.
Right. So, so going to that, so starting this new academic year is always starting a new year. You've got a new class, you've got new friends, you've got a new teacher. It's always a little challenging for kids, especially the first 4 weeks. This year is beyond different from that. So you're meeting. How would you advise parents of elementary school age children and teachers to make the most out of this new opportunity and these new modalities of learning?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. The new modalities. I think that's what we always have to focus on is what are the positive things that are coming from this new situation. And as always, give grace. So you're working with teachers who might not be the most tech savvy. You're working with teachers that are rock stars at technology. So the spectrum is very wide. As are individual preferences. So I have a fifth grader, a third grader, a first grader. So they're all in virtual school right now. But then I also have a 3-year-old who has not been in his daycare since March. So navigating the relationships of their classrooms has been a little bit challenging and different for each one because the teacher, the professional in the classroom, has different preferences. And that makes sense, but we do have to remind ourselves that, there's a wide variety of experience that they bring into this new education space, and think about ways to communicate that might not be the same old way that you've communicated before. So for us, we've really taken the lead from the teachers. So if they prefer email communication, that's what we do. For our first grader, we have to be a little bit more on camera sometimes, or they're in support. They had to take assessments last week. And so they sent out an email saying, we really encourage a parent to be right there as the assessment is started, but then to walk away because they need to, figure out what the child knows. And that doesn't work if I'm there helping the first grader go through the assessment.
Yeah.
So it's a new and different world, but we're working through it and just trying to be as flexible as we can. And remembering that everybody is doing their best, and really focusing on what the positive things are. So I know for my fifth grader, he had to write an email to an administrator to ask about a club he wanted to start. He wants to start a virtual club. He wrote an email, and I don't think that he had done that before to another adult. Yeah. So he had to go through getting that skill, and we went over how that looked and how he's communicating. Yeah. So it's different things that he is learning how to do that he would not have done in a normal first 4 weeks of school.
Right. So how would you recommend the families? So the next question was, what are the best tools parents can use to help their elementary age child? We talked about the 1.5 hours. So there's downtime between that 1.5 hours. So how would you recommend parents handle the downtime?
Yeah, it's hard, especially for, working parents and parents that are at home, some parents that have to go to a job. So figuring out everybody's situation is so different. And some people have more flexibility than others. What's worked for us, and I pulled some information, there's a lot of resources out there about how to kind of navigate this space. Right. One recent article that Dr. Begum did from Georgia State was just about parenting young children and education during this time. And he really stressed, and it's worked for us too, is just scheduling. Just trying to stay as organized as you can. Eric, my husband, and I, we will go over our next day in terms of what meetings we have to be on in order for the other parent to be kind of in charge of Welch Elementary. And then we will look at our students' schedules and see where their downtime is. We have, for our 3-year-old, we have a list of things that he can be interested in. We have Play-Doh ready for him all the time. He knows how to get that. We have, for our other older boys, we have options that are okay for them. We encourage them to maybe not be on the screen when they don't have to be, so they can, we live in a densely populated neighborhood, so we can see our third grader, for example, like take a walk down the street and come back by himself. So, things that we are okay with him in terms of safety doing, we encourage, just because there is a lot of downtime, but they need to be in a lot of cases as independent as we can allow them. And I know that's hard and depends on the situation that you're in, but having a schedule has really helped us. And I will say that third grader helps us do that, because his personality is so tied to expectations and schedules. And I don't think that's atypical for young kids. I think they find a lot of safety and routine. So knowing what is happening helps him feel more secure, and it kind of keeps him calm. And that, of course, gets into thinking about academics versus, not versus, but in addition to social emotional learning. Right. So if, as much as we can, we try to support their mental well-being and talking about what's going on, because it's confusing for adults. So if it's confusing for us, it's got to be somewhat chaotic in their brains in terms of what is happening right now. So as much as we can kind of help them and support their strategies for coping and thinking about this, we do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So for parents, this is a stressful time. For kids, if their parents are stressed, they see the stress. So structure provides that kind of safety net.
Yes.
Doesn't have to be a straitjacket for the family, but it at least kind of gives some predictability in a situation where we're all feeling it's unpredictable. And
yes.
So
and options. So options that you have that you can kind of choose from if you have something that you want to do, or even talking about something that might be coming up that has caused stress in the past. So, saying, I know you have something, you have music tomorrow and you haven't really liked singing on the camera for everybody. Yeah. So why don't you go into a different room? We live in a small house, but go into a different room, and maybe that'll help you enjoy the music session more. Something, just talking about it and managing those expectations has really helped, because I can tell when we don't do it, it's more chaotic and people feel uneasy, which is not great. And for our 3-year-old, it's kind of the same thing. Just as much as we can keep him in a routine, the better.
And the nice thing, the other thing you and I were talking about earlier, was giving the children also a sense of control. So if they have inside that structure, if they have choices inside the structure, and it's something they choose, so it also gives them sort of that control and that independence.
Yes, that's so important. And I'll be honest, for me, that is something that I feel like they're kind of ahead of the curve developmentally. I would not have had these expectations for them if they were in normal school time. So they are doing things that I'm proud of them to be able to do. I'm also asking them to pitch in a little bit more. They know that they have to empty the dishwasher. I don't know if we would have had that regular structure like that if they had been in school. They wouldn't have been here. So I would have emptied the dishwasher every morning, but that they do that. And I'm proud of them for doing that.
You should be. So as we're talking through this, one of the other concerns parents have, besides kind of the learning, is they're worried their kids are going to fall behind. They're not going to get, they're not going to be reading on grade level. They're not going to be getting ready to read on grade level. That as teachers also, that they're not, they're feeling like they have to teach their kids how to read.
Right.
So can you talk about that a little?
Sure. So I will say just that I think about that too. So I think that's a normal worry that parents have. And I also try to remind myself that I was worried about that before this situation, the pandemic. So I think it's hard to kind of center yourself and remember that you're doing the best you can. And a lot of it has to do with a feeling of like hyper competition that maybe does not always exist. So I find comfort in listening to the experts, listen to your child's teachers, listen to your child's pediatricians and people that kind of know about development, because I find comfort in thinking that we know about development for a reason. We know that most typically developing kids will get to certain milestones, given very, minimal and good enough input.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I was thinking about this for early reading. Think about how many adults in your life will say to you, I don't remember learning how to read. I don't remember. And that's a smaller percentage. That's probably less than 20% or maybe less than 30%. But for that number of people and kids, reading comes really easily.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to, think of, and maybe your child won't be one of those kids where it comes easily, but then there are things that you are doing to really help that come along. And there has to be some brain development as well. So rushing to get a 2-year-old to read might not happen. And, or a 3-year-old, it's too early. So there are things that you can kind of find comfort in that we will get there. And everybody is in this situation together. I know that there was that early internet meme kind of like we're all in this storm together. We all have different boats. We all have different crews, though. We have very different situations, but we can all relate to each other in terms of what we're going through. Right. So I think that's comforting too. We're all kind of we might all fall a little bit behind. But the experts, as we get back into a little bit more of normalcy, they'll catch us up and they'll figure out where your kids are and they'll be able to address the issues that are going on.
And there are also, I think, simple things parents can do. It's just as simple as having conversations all the time with your kids.
Yes, language is so important. Yeah. So,
right.
Yeah, and I know that we've had a lot of conversations, again, that we would never have had. Mm-hmm. We have so much time together.
Right.
So we talk about, they've been reading books that actually Dr. Dooley gave us some of her kids' books, and they're the Foxtrot cartoons from the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
So our 3rd and 5th grader are reading these and are asking me questions like, what's 90210? And I'm like, let me tell you about that television show. But, it's a wide range of knowledge that they'll have that they never would have had before.
Right. The things they wouldn't have learned.
Yeah.
That's great. So any other thoughts or tips for families? And as you mentioned, we are all in different boats. Everybody has different situations. So any other thoughts or things? Also, I think you mentioned the concept of grace, and parents should give themselves grace as well.
Yes, for
always
sure.
keep the routine going. You can't.
Yeah. I think of too, the concept of just good enough. Like, give yourself grace. We will be good enough. Don't try to win the parenting or at home school teaching award. I mean, they don't exist. So give yourself grace. Remember, emotions are so important right now, and figuring out how to cope. Coping mechanisms are great. From our own experience, I noticed that our 3-year-old was like really picking his lips and just like noticing those kind of things. I'm like, what? He's anxious about something, but maybe can't communicate right now. So having those moments where in the middle of the day, I happen to have a break and I can read him a book and we can really connect just by him being in my lap. Those moments are really important, and I can count those as, family time. Whereas before I might've had to schedule more specific family time because I was at work all day, they were at school all day. Now we can kind of connect in little small moments that kind of add up throughout the day.
Yeah.
But just to pay attention to relationships and really, if you are in a position of kind of power where you do have a little bit more flexibility, advocate for other parents, advocate for teachers. If you know a little bit more about education and how schools work, inform your general public friends who might not know, and whose expectations have probably, through a sense of anxiety, have just kind of gone through the roof. We are expecting a ton as a community from teachers and schools, and sometimes it's a little much.
Right. Yep. No, thank you for saying that, because I know teachers are struggling with this too.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's hard for everybody.
They didn't become teachers to talk to you through a camera. They became teachers because they wanted to be in the classroom with the kids.
They didn't. And think about how much kind of autonomy and the relationships they build with the students in the classrooms face to face. And they can, kind of read people's moods, and they can, welcome kids into their classroom with a little bit of a calmer atmosphere. And I've noticed when we've been on our first graders calls, every single teacher is so happy and so amped and so engaging every single session. And that is taxing. I cannot imagine how much energy that takes to always be like, hi, talk to me, participate, and they don't have to do that when they're face to face. It's more of a normal relationship. This whole thing is very abnormal.
It really is. Really is.
But they're doing, I will say I have been so impressed with the professionals in our lives. Like they're doing a great job. And I know some of them have a little bit of trouble with technology. They're pulling in their colleagues to help out. They're calling experts. So it's been really,
I know when we have
wonderful.
A storm like this, it doesn't make it any better. There's a storm comes through and somebody's power goes out. What do you do then? So it's been
right.
Day.
You look to your schedule that is posted for your kids to see and see what they can do.
Yeah. So I want to circle back around the L4GA grant. Can you tell us what that means on the ground and how the State Department Ed is trying to bridge that digital divide?
Yeah. So
grants like that through other ways of working with the
system. So as I said earlier, the districts really come up with these awesome plans to improve the literacy gains in their communities. And it is a birth through grade 12 initiative. So they can really think about during school, after school, preschool, daycares. They can include all of the partners that they want. Public libraries are so important. And just to mention those other agencies in general as means of support for you all in your communities, like look to what their resources are, because some of them are amazing. And so those districts put forth these applications, we fund them. If they do need to buy technology for students to, become a one-to-one school, meaning every child has a Chromebook, that is okay to fund. So we are also supporting ways to increase internet accessibility in different places. And of course, we see these amazing, innovative ways, like some districts have had Wi-Fi on buses, and they'll drive around the community, and that bus will become kind of like the hotspot for families. Families are always a little bit more not as comfortable, but families are always, we've seen districts have their Wi-Fi on and extend outside their building so that families can come into the parking lot and work, or different hubs that families can use. So we've really seen a lot of adaptive and innovative ways that districts are providing that technology and internet for their families. I've been really proud of a partnership that we've done with Georgia Public Broadcasting. So another state agency that provides so many resources and education resources for our state citizens. And we have our state learners. I mean, that's what I love about thinking about public broadcasting, all of this educational material that is just fostering that sense of just like, let's learn, let's figure out what is interesting to you. You can look at all of these different things or pull down different resources from the internet about whatever you want to know about. So I think that our partnership with them, they have a broadcast signal that reaches 98% of the state. And so things through TV have been great.
Wonderful, thank you. And I know you brought some resources, some slides. Do you want to show them and talk through them a little bit to the audience?
So exactly what I was just talking about. We've partnered with GPB and come up with the Georgia home classroom. So that includes resources for teachers and resources for parents. So if you have younger kids, one of the things that is, a lot when I was thinking about development and looking to your teachers as experts. In our division, specifically the Department of Ed, we are over standards that are put out to the districts. So we have these getting ready guides that we've come up with, and we've put the standards in kind of parent language. I know a lot of times when you read a standard, you're like, what? And so it's more accessible language. And I think when you read through those guides in terms of getting ready for first, second, third, I think we also have a getting ready for kindergarten. We do. You can look at those and say, oh, we do that. So it's kind of reassuring in terms of what your child needs to know for the next grade. So those are really helpful. We have remote learning plans for teachers, like I mentioned. The Let's Learn Georgia is a new series where teachers have recorded 30-minute video lessons that kids can watch. They're hoping to broadcast them, but they will also be available online. So GPB has a ton of resources.
Right.
We are also working with Get Georgia Reading and the Georgia Family Connection Partnership. And so they have curated a bunch of resources on their Get Georgia Reading at Home page, including those Get Ready guides with other activities that you can do to support those standards that we've put in more accessible parent language. I know that we've worked, Karen, a lot with Atlanta Speech School,
right?
And they have an amazing resources called the Roadmap to Reading for Families. So looking for those on their Cox campus site, looking for those resources that really speak to parents in the home. I mean, and of course, when we all go back face-to-face school, these resources will be just as valuable. I mean, you can use them all the time, but kind of learning about what is the best way to approach these topics. There are so many things out there. We have Educating the Whole Child. I like to remember that we are not just growing brains, we're growing, in academics, we're growing, we're supporting all the social and emotional well-being of our students. And so we have a lot of resources on our Georgia Department of Ed website about educating the whole child, and then thinking about that mindfulness and mental health of our students. There is a mindfulness toolkit on transforming education that is helpful. It's a good talking point to watch with your maybe a little bit older student, but good way to think about and talk about these issues that we're all having.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the resources. And I also there's a couple thoughts I had as you were walking through this one. That especially when they're younger, that I missed when they got older, is that reading time together is so important and fun. It's not, it's just fun, and it's a kind of a playtime for you and your kids to some extent, and that time to connect. And I do want to give a shout out to our public libraries. You can get books for free on so many resources. And either if you have a tablet or a laptop, but also the libraries. So don't forget to, curbside pickup, and a great way to get books and engage with your kids. And I don't know if we had any questions from the audience. I haven't seen any popped up. And I'm getting a note from our behind the scenes of ELF that we need to wrap it up. I just
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, you can say one more thing.
Well, we were talking last night about, my husband and I were talking about how we kind of model our own learning, and especially when we're around each other so much, that's so important. So if we are reading together, we can read a book. We can also read an instruction manual on how we do something. Or I can model, say, I wanted to really make that. I'm going to look that up on YouTube and figure out how that's done. Because that's what we really want. We want lifelong learners, and we want curious kids and critical thinkers. So as much as we can show that we're doing that ourselves, that is, just worth so much.
Right. Thank you, Megan. That's actually really a point to end on. And I want to thank everybody who joined us this morning. And I hope you'll join us next week to hear from Bridget Radicek at the Department of Early Care and Learning. Megan addressed elementary, and Bridget is going to talk about early learners. So thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Megan.